Hi, I'm Melissa Bell, and welcome to the Business Roundup, where we catch up with the movers and shakers in the business world. Today, joining me is Chris Anderson. He is the General Counsel at Rayburn Electric Cooperative. Thank you for joining me today. Now, energy is a hot topic right now, especially in places like Texas. You know, we have hurricane season. We had some grid problems. Can you start off about telling us a little bit about Rayburn Electric Cooperative and who you serve?
Sure. Rayburn Electric Cooperative is east and north of the Dallas Metroplex, and we serve 4 member cooperatives. So Rayburn is a generation and transmission cooperative. So we're responsible for acquiring the energy supply for our members and then transmitting that electricity to them in a high voltage standpoint. So I can geek you out on some of the differences of high voltage versus low voltage, but basically our members then serve their own membership at the residential or retail level. So depending on how you receive your electricity, we call them members. Investor-owned utilities and others will call them customers. The reason why we call them members is as part of cooperative, our members are also owners of our businesses. They receive capital credits, and so they're part owners in their electric system, and we take kind of that responsibility of serving what used to be rural Texas very seriously, because now it's not so rural, and that's really what's led to a lot of our growth on the system.
And I know, I work in Texas, but I grew up in Florida, and so I have to compare it to something I know. So FPL, what would be the difference between like an FPL and a cooperative?
Sure. FPL is an investor-owned utility, so they have shareholders. You know, they're responsible. They're most likely their rates are regulated by the Florida Public Utilities Commission or its equivalent. I can't remember what it's called in Florida. In Texas, the cooperatives have a mandatory service area. So if you locate your home or your business in one of our 4 members' service territories, we are obligated to serve your business or residence. But along with that, you become an owner of our cooperative. And rather than being a shareholder, we're a not-for-profit entity. We pour our profits back into our system. And so we work very hard to develop a resilient and affordable system for our members. And what's unique about where we are in our portion of Texas is it's growing incredibly quickly, both from a residential standpoint, but now also commercially. And so our focus is on that member growth and making sure what we call, our tagline is called member focused, member driven. And that's really meaning that as the generation and transmission cooperative that serves each one of our 4 members and then ultimately the residences and businesses that they serve, is our goal is to make sure that they have low cost, reliable power. And our job is to make sure we have the acquisition of energy and the ability to transmit it to their distribution systems as efficiently and low cost as possible, while also being reliable.
And now I know you've led Rayburn through a period of incredible change in the recent years. As assets they have grown up to 300 million, so that's pretty impressive. What are some of the driving forces behind that transformation?
It really is the growth. Our portion of Texas, our couple of our members serve not only the fastest growing counties in Texas, but the fastest growing counties in the United States. So our system is growing incredibly quickly. And so we have the duty, the obligation, but also it makes the job very exciting and fun, is how do we meet that load growth on our system? How do we plan? Utility planning is very unique in terms of it's 5 and 10 years out. So we need to look at what does the system going to look like in 5 or 10 years, and then work backwards to make sure we have the infrastructure in place to meet that growth demand. And then do we have the energy supply necessary to pour the power into those residences and businesses when they need them? And so that's the exciting part about being in Texas where we are. And then you combine that with the fact that Texas kind of stands alone on its own energy grid standpoint. It manages its energy grid itself through what's called ERCOT, the Energy Reliability Council of Texas. So Texas is a very dynamic and very variable and exciting energy market and very interesting to be a part of.
Now, I know there was also a winter storm, correct? That caused a little bit of issues. How did the winter storm Uri was a wake up call? How was that a wake up call for Texas utilities and how they handled things?
So what Winter Storm Uri really meant for Rayburn itself is we learned that we needed to double down on the resiliency, the infrastructure, and the energy supply side of our business. While Rayburn was very well, we right now, of course, what's in the news is forecasting on the weather and what happened in Texas, the tragedy in Texas with the rain event that recently occurred. Winter Storm Uri was very similar in terms of weather forecasting predicted that there was going to be a significant storm. Utilities, entities like Rayburn prepared for that. Unfortunately, what happened was some of the infrastructure that served us, that we rely upon, failed. And what we learned from that process was let's try to get as much of that energy supply infrastructure under our own control so that if there is a winter storm event, it won't freeze because we're going to make sure it doesn't freeze up on us. There were a number of pipelines that froze. There were a number of generation units that failed to adequately prepare for the winter weather. And so we can touch on it in a second. We actually went out and purchased a power plant, and part of that need for us and the business driver for us to do that was we want to own more assets and control more assets so we're better prepared for a winter storm event like we did. Now, there are other issues that came up with Winter Storm Uri. Primarily, there was a regulatory aspect to it where the Public Utilities Commission set energy prices at a certain cost. And basically, for a 1-week period of energy supply that we had, the energy bills for our customers that they were left with, for our members, I should say, that we were left with was almost 3 years worth of an energy bill. And so, that's a pretty amazing impact on how much the cost of energy drove Texas. Not only was it a weather event that caused death and destruction to people and equipment, but it was also an economic catastrophe. And so one of the things we did, and when we came out of Winter Storm Uri, when we were faced with those huge energy bills as a result of some of the decisions that the economic regulators made with respect to how to handle Winter Storm Uri and its effects on the system, we had to securitize, and we were the first cooperative in the country to securitize. So basically, we took that energy bill, and rather than force that down to our members and them forcing it down to their residential and commercial customers, we securitized that amount and basically treated it like a long-term mortgage. We were able to work with our financing side of our business. There were a number of folks that stepped up to help us securitize that amount. So ultimately, we were able to pay that bill off over essentially a 25, 30-year period and really reduce the impact of what Winter Storm Uri had financially on our base membership. And we avoided Rayburn itself avoided financial catastrophe as a result, and we also made sure to protect our 4-member cooperatives as well.
Yeah, because that's amazing. I'm sure, people did not need the economic hardship on top of what they just experienced. So
it's real when you realize the impact of what an electric bill can have on a residential customer, and then the fact even though we do serve a growing area, we still serve a very rural area, and sometimes the rural areas did not have the same economic sufficiency and the same economic backbone that some of our cities do. And so, that was the birth of cooperatives to begin with, was the investor-owned utilities, and the larger utilities were very happy to string wires and supply customers in cities, but the rural farmers of America and others were left without electricity for a significant amount of time. And that's how the cooperative movement began in the 1930s. And we take that history to heart in terms of our tie to our communities and our assurance that we have the obligation to serve them reliably and to make sure the system is resilient and to make sure that we keep our energy cost as affordable as possible.
And that was, I know you mentioned a little bit, so some of the new technologies and partnerships that are in place since then, what do those include?
What we've really done is we had existing partnerships on the financial side, but we heavily relied on those when Winter Storm Uri came through, and when we moved forward to do the financing for the acquisition of the power plant that we acquired was owned, and there were hedge funds and others that were essentially the asset was going to be auctioned off, and we participated in the bidding process, and we beat out hedge funds and other larger entities because we had a very economical offer, but we also, I think the sellers saw the business need and the driver of why we were acquiring the business, and I think they knew that we would be a good partner in that transaction. And so when we acquired the Rayburn Energy Station, think about it, only 2 or 3 years earlier, we were on the brink of bankruptcy ourselves, and now we're working with our lenders and other financiers to make sure that we could acquire that asset and bring it into our system because they saw the benefit on our system. So part of it is just telling our story and making sure that we create and reinforce those partnerships that we have with our financing side of our lenders and others who will work with us on the business partnership side. But also politically, regulatory wise, we need to make sure that in Austin, the capital of Texas, as the state legislature meets every 2 years, that we develop the relationships with the legislators that obviously are within our own service territories and the member cooperatives and the constituents / members that we both serve, but also other major energy players in the state of Texas, so they understand both the cooperative model and what we're trying to do as a business and the fact that we're a little bit different than an investor-owned utility. And that we're not there for shareholders, we're there for the system, we're there for the communities. But then also, understand what our business, aside from our business model, what our needs are, what our objectives are, so that we can partner with them when we have needs, if we have a crisis, that when we go to a senator or representative in the State House, they have a better idea of who we are, they understand a little bit more about what our objectives are, and they understand what the Rayburn business is. So we've worked really hard to develop those partnerships. And then just community-wide, local leaders, making sure that they know that we are partners in their growth. We're partners in the development of their systems to the extent that they want to continue to encourage economic development. We are there as a partner to help attract, whether it's a data center or whether it's a commercial business or whether it's a residential development. And we want to make sure that we have a good relationship with them as well, because as we forecast our infrastructure needs, we need to work with those local political leaders to permit and site transmission lines or power plants or other infrastructure necessary for our membership to be able to acquire the energy that they need. So there's multi-level relationships that we have really honed and have furthered as a result of a crisis like Winter Storm Uri. And so I always like to say that out of crisis, there's also, crisis is a great opportunity for you to strengthen and resolve and really show what you're made of. And I think Rayburn, teetering on the edge of bankruptcy to now showing where we are in terms of our system growth and our infrastructure investment, can really show how crisis can be a catalyst and really a confidence builder. And I think that's really what Rayburn has catapulted itself from that time period.
I know you were talking a little bit that North Texas is one of the fastest growing regions in the U.S., not even in Texas. How is that affecting your systems and the planning ahead?
Yeah, so again, what we've really done, another part of Winter Storm Uri that I can use to elaborate on this question is we've really doubled down on our power supply investment in terms of people. So while we were very well prepared for a situation like Winter Storm Uri, we've really doubled down on hiring the internal expertise to essentially employ. We've got 3-4 member power supply team, and so they look at weather forecasting, they look at energy supply, they really use models and systems and analytics to really make sure that we're prepared for the worst of times, but then also have the basis to supply the everyday needs of our system. I think the growth on the system has really impacted our ability to grow. Of course, as our members grow, we're going to grow. And so as the Texas growth has occurred, one of the things that's really affected us is we need to attract and retain talent. And so at the end of the day, Rayburn is a people business. We're here to serve our members, and we're here to focus on what our members need. And if we're going to do that, we need to attract and retain the right people. And so I've become very passionate in my job. I get to lead the HR group, and that's been something that's been kind of a capstone to my career and my life. I love working with the people, investing in their leadership development, their management development, and really seeing where people, in some cases, can go. As our CEO, David Naylor, says, sometimes we see in people what they don't see in themselves. And it's really exciting and fun to be able to peel that onion away. And when they realize that they're in a position of leadership and they're developing, to see that confidence and that light go off in someone's eye or in their mind, to see that, hey, I can do this, and I'm good at this, and I have something to contribute. And that really lights the fire for me in terms of the passion of the people side of our business. And so we work really hard to attract and retain really good talent. And what we do once they get into Rayburn is we don't focus on a hierarchical system. We focus more on a flat organization. And in many cases, you're hired. We've had people here. There are many folks who have been hired that are no longer working in the job that they were hired for. They have grown and developed into places where they're needed, their skills are needed, or they've developed skills, and now they can add additional duties and responsibilities to what they do. So we've tried to be very unrestrictive in terms of how we manage our people and how we manage their development, and it's been a really great payoff for Rayburn because our members see the benefit of that, and they have really helped reinforce our management team and our CEO's leadership in that area. And I should add, to toot our horn, as we've gotten better at this, we've become recognized in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We've become a top small business recognized in Dallas-Fort Worth as a leading local business itself. And our CEO last year was the top CEO leader for small businesses in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. So we've really catapulted ourselves forward based on our leadership philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people they might have all the skill sets and have everything that's needed, but it's just that confidence that they're lacking to take it to the next level and, assume more of a leadership type of role.
Absolutely. And to give someone, first of all, the exposure to that leadership capability, and then to see them grab a hold of it and run with it, it's really exciting. And it's great to see people really have confidence in themselves and be challenged and meet that challenge and gain that confidence that you just referenced.
And now, are you seeing any new types of demand, like large scale commercial, industrial users, anything in that kind of that you didn't see like a decade ago?
Yes. Yeah. When I was hired at Rayburn, the big issue was crypto mining. Now the big issue in our service territories and all over Texas, and frankly, this is a U.S. issue, is all the large scale data centers and all the needs that those will have. One of the benefits I had when I came to Rayburn is I came from an investor-owned utility where the majority of our system was supplied by mining and natural resources-based industries. 60% of the utility that I worked for, their revenue was driven by 10 or 12 large businesses. When I went to Rayburn, almost 90% of the system was residential. But now, as we see the growth, even in that residential system, now with larger commercial and industrial projects coming forward, it'll be really interesting to see how Texas as a whole and our company working with our 4 cooperative members, will rise to the challenge of addressing these data centers as they want to locate, because we have to serve them. We have to create the infrastructure to enable them to connect to the system. And we have to work with them to make sure that they have the energy supply necessary, but that they also don't negatively impact the membership who already exists on the system. So it's a really interesting and exciting time to be part of the energy industry when you think about the data centers and their impact. The state has really laid the groundwork. Our partners in the state have laid the groundwork to give us some of the tools to plan accordingly, to make sure that if someone is actually looking at locating in your service territory, that they have make some commitments, so that they're not saying, well, I might locate here, but I also might locate there. So now they have 2 different potential suitors thinking that they're going to locate in one area when maybe they're not. And so, the state has really tried to get a hold of this, because obviously the state has to plan for its energy supply and what the impact is on the system as a whole. So really it's taking our analytics, our forecasting, and our infrastructure supply and tying all those together to make sure that we're ready and able to serve these developments when they occur. We welcome them. The issue is how to make sure that we welcome them the right way.
And that the needs are met. Yeah, because I heard that they do require, or they will require, an enormous amount of energy. So that's going to be, and that's just across the board. I think Texas and other places too are going to have to work that out.
I think, the other part of this is we have significant investment, of course, in gas-fired generation, the Rayburn plant that we acquired, and now we're using our partnership with the state to be a part of the Texas Energy Fund. Rayburn was one of the 17 initial awardees under what's called the Texas Energy Fund, which is the constitutional amendment that came through from the Texas legislature a couple of years ago that wanted to encourage more generation on the system, partially in response to what happened with Uri. Rayburn was the only cooperative that applied, and we were, as we indicated, one of those selected to go forward with this process. In a sense, what's happening is the state of Texas will help fund 60% of that generation development through a low-interest fund program. And of course, we have to go through a due diligence process with the state to make sure that we have a good project and we're doing everything. But so far, we've had a great relationship with the state of Texas and the Texas Energy Fund folks that are part of this. So there's infrastructure development that's in place that will help meet these needs. And I think that's the most important part for us is we have the partnership and we have the tools available to us. So gas-fired generation is one aspect of where we're going here. But we also see, and don't be surprised if Rayburn is one of the leaders in the state of Texas as we start to look at some of the small nuclear reactor type generation supply. I think nuclear is going to be a key energy driver as we go forward. I think it's going to be an important part of the energy solution, both in Texas and nationwide.
And that would kind of play into, like, with the mixed energy type uses, what do you think is going to happen along the lines of, like, mixed with natural and gases and different types of things being a nuclear? Are these things going to become more, I don't want to say, blended? Are they going to be like kind of going off of each other?
They will. Yeah. We are generation supply agnostic is the best way to say it. Whatever resources are available to us, we will utilize. The difficulty right now is on the gas-fired generation supply, for example. It's very hard to get the gas supply turbines. Those are 3, 4, 5 years out. So when I talk to you about energy planning and system planning, we're already planning 5 and 10 years out. Then we're also looking at, well, what's the infrastructure needs and what are the equipment that we need to be able to build the towers, string the lines, build the generation. And so, that's one of the key things that we have to focus on is what does the infrastructure give us? There's a lot of things going on with tariffs, nationwide and worldwide. So there's a lot of things at play that affect infrastructure availability. And another reason why we become supply agnostic is solar, batteries, wind, gas-fired generation, small nuclear, whatever the resource is. Number one, we are ready to help connect it to the grid, and we are ready to be an off-taker of it if it makes sense for our member base.
And if we had to kind of wrap it up, what would you say if people were thinking about Rayburn years from now? What would you like to be known for? The company be known for?
I think what I would like Rayburn to be known for is to continue on the trajectory that we're on right now, as I indicated to you, going from the brink of bankruptcy and really catapulting itself into being a energy leader in the region and in the state. I think that's part of it. And I think not only is that from how we meet our members' needs and how we grow as a utility, but I also want our employees and our employee base and the alumni that we develop, the people that we may develop that may move on to other positions within the energy industry. I want all those folks to look back at their time at Rayburn and see Rayburn not only as a preeminent G&T in Texas, but in the United States. And I think I would want folks to think about Rayburn as being a catalyst in the energy industry itself.
And if people wanted more information, people in Texas, or would they go to the website? What would be the best way to get them?
RayburnElectric.com is our website. And I don't know if you post this information, if folks want to find me on LinkedIn or to go to Rayburn on LinkedIn, there's a number of ways to get a hold of us. But the Rayburn story is a great story. We have great leadership. Our CEO is a fantastic personal leader and has a lot of a great reputation, but he also has tremendous support from his board and his board of directors. And they're all aligned and they're all focused on developing a very strong system, a resilient system, and a reliable system for our membership in Texas.
I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining the Business Roundup, where we always try to bring you interviews with some of the leading people in business, whether it be technology, finance, or energy. I hope you tune in. I hope you subscribe and listen, and we'll give you updates for new interviews that are coming up. Until next time, I'm Melissa Bill.